Good morning, students. Today we are going to talk about adding and subtracting fractions with unequal denominators, okay? We're going to be talking about using a number denominator chart to rewrite fractions with the same denominators. And then we're going to talk about adding and subtracting using models and just using the standard algorithm. Now it's up the PowerPoint. Yay! Okay. So when we talk about adding and subtracting fractions, we have three basic rules. Number one, you do not add or subtract the denominators. Leave the denominators alone. You only are going to add and subtract the numerators. Those are the numbers on top. Number two, all our models have to be the same size. So when you're drawing your model, whether it be on graph paper or on regular printing paper, they must be the same size. And number three, the most important rule, that's why I saved it for last. Denominators have to be the same. You cannot add or subtract fractions if your denominators are not the same number, okay? They must be the same. So let's get started. Before we start adding and subtracting our fractions, we're going to talk about something called the numerator-denominator chart. The numerator-denominator chart is a chart that allows you to skip count and find a denominator that both fractions have in common. Okay, so let's go over some basic terminology before we get started. The numerator is your top number. So if I look at the fraction 1/2, my numerator is going to be 1. So I'm going to put 1 in the numerator section. My denominator is going to be the number in the bottom of the fraction. And in this case, for 1/2 is going to be 2. So I put the 2 here. Now, we're going to make our numerator-denominator chart because I want to add 1/2 plus 1/7. Now, if we go back to our rules, my denominators have to be the same. 2 and 7 are not the same. So I need to make them the same. So let's get started. We're going to use our chart to help us. So all I'm going to do in my chart is I'm going to skip count. So my numerator, the first number I have is 1. So what's going to be next? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's go to our denominator. And we're going to skip count by whatever number I have at the top. I have 2. So that means I'm going to skip count by 2s. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And that's 18. And I'm going to continue to skip count. So let's keep skip counting, and I'm going to stop at 7. No, I'm going to stop at 8. So we're going to do 6, 7, 8. This is going to be 12, 14, and 16. So once I've done this, I have created fractions. I have created new fractions that are all equal to 1/2. So 2/4 is equivalent or equal to 1/2. 3/6 is equivalent or equal to 1/2. Okay. Now remember, the whole point of this chart is to find a fraction that 1/2 and 1/7 both have in common, or they have the same denominator. So let's get started. I'm going to make a numerator-denominator chart for 1/7. So I'm going to put my numerator, which is 1, thank you, in the numerator section. And then I'm going to put the denominator, which is the bottom number, 7, in the denominator chart. So now we're going to do the same thing. For the numerator side, I am going to skip count by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to stop at 5. If I need to continue on, just like I did for the 1/2, I can continue. Now, for my denominator, my number is 7. That means I'm going to skip count by 7. So 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. So these fractions, 2/14, 3/21, 4/28, and 5/35 are fractions that are equal to 1/7. Now remember, the whole point of our numerator denominator chart is to find a fraction that 1/2 and 1/7 have in common. So I'm going to look at my denominators. Remember, I want our denominators to be the same. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Ooh, 14. Well, let's see if I have any of these numbers in my other chart. 7, ooh, 14. I have found a way to rewrite 1/2 and 1/7 where they both have the same denominator. So 1/2 is now going to become let me move this down. Technical difficulties. Let me move this one down too. 1/2 is now going to become 7/14 because this fraction is equivalent to 1/2. And I'm going to shade it yellow. This fraction is 7/14. Okay. Plus, remember, both have to be the same. So I found the fraction 2/14. I'm going to shade it yellow. And instead of 1/7, my fraction is now going to be 2/14. Can I add these fractions? Yes, because my denominators are now the same. Okay, so 7 plus 2 is going to be, let me paste that because that's going to mess it up. 7 plus 2 is going to be 9. And then 14 plus 14, well, I can't do that because we don't add or subtract the denominators. So all I'm going to do is write 14. So this is our numerator denominator chart. This is how I can find a fraction, an equivalent fraction that 1/2 and 1/7 have in common with the same denominator. Let's do another one in practice again. Okay, so I have 3/4 minus 5/12. Well, obviously I cannot add 3/4. I cannot subtract 3/4 from 5/12 because I do not have the same denominator. So I'm going to make my chart and try to figure out if I can find a fraction that both 3/4 and 5/12 have in common, that have with a common denominator. So I'm going to put the 3, because that's the number on top in the numerator section, and the 4 in the denominator section. That's the number on the bottom. And I'm going to skip count by 3 in the numerator side. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And I'm going to skip count by 4 in the denominator section. So 4, 8, 12. Oh man, 12, 16, whoo, and 20. So I have skip counted, and all of these fractions that I have here, so 6 eighths, 9 twelfths, 12 sixteenths, 15 twentieths, are fractions that they are all equivalent to 3/4. I'm going to do the same thing again for 5/12. So I'm going to put the 5 in the numerator and the 12 in the denominator. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to skip count by 5s. And then I'm going to skip count by 12s, and I'm going to form my new fractions. So 5, 10, 15, 20. That is not 20, that is 12, 20. And then I'm going to skip count by 12s. So 5 12ths, 10 24ths, 15 36, and 20 48ths. Now remember, I want a fraction where they have the same denominator. Well, I look here, I see 9 12ths, so I'm going to highlight that. And I look here and I see, ooh, 5/12. They have the same denominator, so I'm going to use those fractions. So now I can rewrite 3/4 and 5/12 where they have. I can rewrite 3/4 and 5/12 as for two fractions that have the same denominator, thanks to my numerator denominator chart. Okay. Now again, you see me struggling with the computer, you are lucky. You are doing this on paper. So you won't have as much struggle as Ms. McCord. So 3/4 is now going to become 9/12. Why is it becoming 9/12? Because the number we found out, because that's the fraction that they both have in common and have the same denominator. Okay, I don't know what's happening. Come on, computer, we just did this. So this is going to become 9, and this is going to become 12. And then this stays the same. So now, can I subtract 9/12 from 5/12? Yes. 9/12 from 5/12 is going to become, delete that. Yep. Let's not delete that. 9 minus 5 is going to be 4. And then remember, we don't subtract our denominators. We do not subtract our denominators. So that's going to be 12, okay? So my answer is 4/12. If you do not see 4/12 on your answer choices, that means that it is not in simplest terms. And so in order to do that, you can simply cross multiply your answers with 4/12 and find out which one is equivalent to 4/12, okay? And in this case, I'm going to paste again, delete, don't delete that. 4/12 is the same as 1/3. Okay, so this is our answer. This is how we make a numerator denominator chart, okay? Now we're going to add and subtract using models and using our charts. Okay, so let's get started. So next slide. We're going to add 1/4, 1/6 plus 1/4, okay? Okay, 1/4 plus 1/6 plus 1/4. Now, we can do this just using the standard algorithm, or we can do this using pictures. I like to include models because sometimes models help us. Now, remember what our rule was. Our models have to be the same size, okay? My models are the same size, and I have 6 pieces, and I have 4 pieces. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 1/6 plus 1/4. Now, remember what our rule was. Our denominators have to be the same. Are 6 and 4 the same? No, they're 2 different numbers. So I'm going to have to make me a new chart to find, I'm going to have to find a number that 6 and 4 having, I'm going to have to find a common denominator that 6 and 4 have. So first thing I'm going to use is I'm going to use my numerator denominator chart. So I'm going to make one for 1/6. So my numerator here is going to be 1. My denominator is going to be 6. Okay. Again, I'm going to skip count by 1 for my numerators, and then I'm going to skip count by 6. Okay, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll stop at 5. And then I'm going to skip count by 6. So 6, 12, 18. Ooh, got my brain good. 24, and then 30. So I have just created fractions that are equivalent to 1/6. So this is 2/12, 3/18, 4/24, 5/30. Okay. Now, remember, I want to find a fraction that has the same denominator. So I'm looking for one of these numbers in my next chart, which is 1/4. So I put my 1 and then my 4, and I'm going to skip count again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll stop at 5. And then I'm going to skip count by 4. So 4, 8, 12. Oops, forgot again. 16, and then 20. That is not 16. That is 1. And then 20. Okay, remember, I want to find a fraction that has the same denominator. Well, if I look here, here's 12. So this fraction is 2/12. Shade that in because I found my friend. And this is 12. Ooh, and this fraction is 3/12. So I have just rewritten 1/6 and 1/4 as a fraction where they have the same denominator, which will be 12. So my denominator here is going to be 2, and my fraction is going to be 12. And then my going to be 3, and it's going to be 12. Okay. Now, I can add 2/12 plus 3/12. That's going to give me 5/12. That's going to be our final answer. Now, if you're using the pictures and you figured out that 6 and 4 have 12 in common, you're going to need to split all of this up into 12. You're going to need to split this up into 12 pieces. So you have to think, how can I get 6 into 12 equal pieces? Well, I know if I double 6, that's going to give me 12. So that means I probably need to cut these pieces into 2 pieces. So I'm going to cut each 6 into 12 pieces. Backwards, I'm going to cut each piece into 2 pieces. So when I'm done, I should have 12 pieces in total. And we'll count and check and make sure. Split and split. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're on the right track. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 pieces. And if you notice, 2 of those pieces are shaded in, which matches our fraction. So yay! Now let's do fourths. I need to figure out how I can get from 4 to 12. Well, I know 4 times 3 gives me 12. So why don't I split my pieces? Why don't I split each fourth into 3 equal pieces? So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start with this piece and I'm going to split it up. Now, you see me doing all this fancy stuff on the computer. You're lucky. You get to do this on paper. So you don't have to click this every square you do. All you got to do is just draw 3 lines for each fourth. So that's 3. And keep going. And then we're going to split again. 3. And we're going to do 3 more. Okay, so I'm going to count. And again, I should have a total of 12 pieces if I did this correctly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 12 pieces. Woohoo! And out of my 12 pieces, 3 are shaded. Yes! So it worked out. So 2 12ths plus 3 12ths, if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is 5 12ths. So our final answer for this problem shall be equal. I will put paste. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. Is now going to become 5 12ths. That's our answer. Okay. So we're going to be talking about this in class. If you have any questions, please let me know. I do apologize. This video is a tad bit longer than usual, but it has all the information you will need to help you with your problem.